Okay, so let's get started. And this is the meeting of the Marine Activity Advisory Committee meeting. And today is Tuesday, October the 15th. And I believe that everyone was sent a copy of the unapproved minutes, which we will address later. And I also sent out another agenda. So I want to begin by introducing our visitor this morning, Joe Jankowski. And Joe, you are associated with what organization?
Actually, two organizations that do things around here. One is the Protectors of the St. Martin River, which has a lot of members in Ocean Pines and in the surrounding areas. And the second is the Lower Shore group of the Sierra Club, which is an environmental group. The Lower Shore group represents Worcester, Wicomico, Dorchester, and Somerset counties.
And they're called the Lower Shore Group of the Sierra Club.
Right. The Sierra Club is a national organization.
It's a national organization. And you said that this particular group represents certain counties here?
Right. The four lower counties.
So it'll be Worcester,
Wicomico, Somerset, and Dorchester.
Okay.
Got it.
And so we've been discussing concerns that were raised in the community about the waters, the canals, and the river. And we've become involved with projects. And of course, you know, we've been involved with your project for a number of years now. Mm-hmm. And it was the committee thought it would be a great idea if you could come today and speak with us about what you're doing. We had some concerns about the impact of lack of grant money on, I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry?
I think you're covering it. I just thought we were talking. I think we got into this discussion first because we were saying that Maryland Coastal Bays was losing some of its funding, and they
so I was just saying that. I was just
okay.
So thank you, but
okay.
I was just addressing that.
Okay.
And so we became concerned that maybe there was a lack of grant money and wondered if there's anything our committee should do. So I'm going to introduce Joe Jankowski, and he's going to speak to the group. And everyone, if you have questions, raise your hand, and we'll grab you, and you can ask that question of Joe. Thank you, Joe, for being here.
Okay. Well, for one, I am not a member of the Maryland Coastal Bays program, but I do donate to them on an annual basis. They're the ones that have lost some funding. I don't know the exact details of that, but one of the impacts of that was they had been getting oyster cages from another group, and they've decided they're now going to construct their own oyster cages, and they come over to visit with me, and I've demonstrated how we put ours together and given them lists of where they can get the different parts that are involved in putting together the oyster cages. So they're not going to do that. I am an environmentalist, and so I am building oyster cages sort of out of the, to support that part of my person, is to support the environment. And I'm not trying to make a profit, so all I do is I buy the materials, I keep track of what the materials cost, and then I sell the cages at whatever the materials cost or close to it. I mean, I try to make everything a multiple of $5. So actually the costs right now are about $49, but I charge $45. And the costs have really been impacted by increase in the sewer pipe, which is a low or a lightweight pipe that I use for the float. That went from originally at about $11 a 10-foot section to now it's over $20 a 10-foot section. But fortunately, one of the things that Lowe's does is if you buy 8 of them, you can get a 10% discount on the price. So I've been doing that and using them all up because people keep wanting to do this. They're willing to spend charge, I believe, doing cages. The metal cages, clip, a rope on it that were hung off the dock. And I originally had done cages like that, but what I found was when it's hung off the dock, there's several things that can happen. If you hang it too low off the dock, you can't really see where it is. If it hits the bottom, then the oysters sit in the bottom, and the bottom, most of the bottom around here is muddy. So they could end up down in the mud, suffocate and die. It could kill the oysters just being all the way in the bottom. So what I used to tell people was take it down off the dock until it hits the bottom, then pull it up at least 6 inches or so, and then tie it off however you're going to tie it off. So one of the things is it could kill the oysters by sitting on the bottom. The second thing is you have to have some place where you can hang it off where it doesn't rub against either your bulkhead or a piling, because if it does, the cages are made of steel, which is then coated with PVC, some coating, and it'll rub that coating off, and then the cage will rust out at that spot, which is what happened to a few of the early cages that I had made. The third thing that could happen, which is actually proven to not be an issue, but people are concerned about it, is that in the wintertime, you get low tides here in this area. And also you get freezing weather. So what can happen is the tide can go low, lowering the water level. The water then freezes, and if you just hung your cage off the dock, it can be out of the water, which means the oysters then freeze. Well, as it turns out, oysters have a natural antifreeze. I had 8 cages out of the water one morning. I talked to a friend, he said they have a natural antifreeze, just get them back in the water, see what happens. So I went out, chopped a hole in the ice, got them back under the water. All the oysters lived. None of them died
Wow.
whatsoever. So, and that was 8 cages, so that was probably 400 oysters or so. So that's sort of the status of this. I've been simply buying the materials and then selling the cages, so I have no issues with any funding. I'm selling them at cost, so I'm recovering my costs. So I have no issues at all with funding. Maryland Coastal Base Program has the issue with funding. I'm not sure of the details.
Anyone have any questions for Visitor Sue? Sue,
Before.
can
so
you hear me?
sound, yes. The sound goes in and out, your sound. I've never done this before, so it goes in and out.
I'm having the same issue. It's coming in and out.
Are you having the same issue, Mike? Yeah.
Well, the speaker's right there. Maybe we need to get closer to it when we're talking, I guess. Were there any questions about any issues with regard to Maryland Coastal Bays or myself and oysters?
Well, I know that, I mean, just from personal experience that, we bring the oysters to you and then you give them to base. That's not going to impact that, right? That will still continue.
Not at all.
Okay.
This year we're
Two questions. How do we know when to give you the oysters? Like what?
Okay, it just stopped, didn't it?
Fun to watch.
film.
At what point do
Yeah,
we?
report.
Yeah. At what point do we tell you when the oysters are grown?
okay. I usually say there's 2 factors that determine when you donate your oysters. One, they're either getting so heavy, you're having a hard time getting the cage out of the water to clean off the cage and clean off the oysters. If it's getting to be too heavy, bring them back, and get some more small oysters, which you'll be able to get out of the water and continue the process. And then the second one is once they get to be 3 inches across, they're mature and they can be put into the wild with, and, generally survive.
Do we just give you a call when they get to that point?
When they get to that point, what I try to do is I try to keep track of when people have gotten a cage and oysters from me. And so when it gets to be 12 to 18 months from when they got the oysters, I say, if you'd like to donate, I can coordinate the donation here. We can do an exchange. You bring me the mature oysters, I'll put them temporarily off my dock until Maryland Coastal Bays can pick them up, and I'll give you replacement seed oysters. The oysters themselves cost about $5 for the 75 oysters.
So about 12 months, 12 to 18 months?
12 to 18 months. It all depends on how good the water flow is past the oysters, which is a function of where you are in the flow of water around here and how clean you keep the cage and the oysters, because as in the summertime, you get a lot of aquatic vegetation and seaweed and all that growing on the cage, which can plug up the holes and reduce the flow of water, which will slow down the growth of the oysters. So a friend of mine tells me a story about how he knows a lot of oyster farmers. The farmers are the ones that sell to restaurants, farmers in the area. And there was this one farmer right near the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay who had such good water flow. His oysters went from maybe 1/4 to 1/2 inch to 3 inches in 12 months consistently, and some even bigger than that. So that's getting a lot of, obviously the flow at the mouth of the Chesapeake is pretty continuous and pretty big because the tides are going to flush in and out of there pretty well. Here, someone who's got a lot on a canal that's sort of near the end of a canal, they're not going to get a whole lot of water movement. So they're, oysters are filter feeders. They're looking to filter the water, and if it's just stagnant there, they're going to filter all the nutrient out and not grow as quickly. Whereas if the water is flowing by, they'll get fresh nutrient coming by on a regular basis.
The second question, what, if anything, can we do as a committee to promote this project and without overwhelming you? I mean, we put the cage, we talked about doing 2. I want to do 1 first and kind of see how it goes.
Right.
Eventually we'd like to put a second one there if it goes okay, and put a sign up for educational purposes, things like that. Is it possible to get some, that we can look into, get some kind of funding from Ocean Pines to promote this and say handle something like that? I mean, where are we going from here?
In other words, you're going to fund Ocean Pines residents
to get a cage.
buying a
I'm just saying, is that something that is doable?
I mean,
from your angle?
There's a number of environmental groups around here, and some of them said, well, why don't you just apply for a grant? You can get a grant for a couple $1,000 and you can make a lot of cages for people.
That's what I mean.
I'm not running a business.
Yeah,
I'm just doing this word of mouth.
Yeah.
And right now, I've been making about 40 cages a year, which is sort of like, for me, it's like an upper limit. I mean, it takes, a while to make each of those cages. You got to keep on top of having all the materials available.
It's a lot of work.
There's some effort involved, and then coordinating people coming in, getting them. One of the issues that I'm running into a loop is I only have about 14 cages, which means if 16 people want to come drop off oysters, I have to figure out a place to put all of them. And so I can just make myself more cages and put them in and take the tax credit that Maryland offers. But I'm not looking to greatly expand it. If your goal is to improve the water quality in the canals and ocean ponds, go to the source. The source is everybody fertilizing their lawns, everybody doing, Roundup in places where it can wash into the water and kill the aquatic vegetation. That's where to start.
That's what we're doing with the water testing and doing all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious if, see, you're in essence maxed out of the production, except for
pretty
here or there having somebody wanting to do a cage.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
commendable. What you've
And-
done is amazing to me.
And
Yeah.
people are still coming up, hear about it here, there, whatever. I've gone to there's a Anglers group here.
Yeah, there is an Anglers
I
Club.
went to their
Spoke to them.
expo one Saturday morning, like, hold on. 30. There were 10 people that were doing cages. There have been articles in newspapers about this. As a result, usually there's a demand for a few oyster cages here or there, sometimes as many as 10 or so. So that's sort of where the whole continued growth of oyster cages. I have to say, it's probably not for everybody. There are people out there who have just said, look, this is too much work. I'm done with it. Because you got to get them out of the water during the summertime, depending upon where you are, on a fairly regular basis, or they're going to get clogged up. And cleaning them off, I pressure wash them, and with that pressure washing, there's also some barnacle growth on them. So I also use a paint scraper to scrape off the barnacles. So it's, to clean the 8 or 10 cages that really have the water. And so, okay, most people have one cage. So maybe their process might last an hour if they use a pressure washer, or if they just use a hose and a brush. There's a bit of brushing involved.
That's what I do, because I have a pressure washer
Yeah.
at the yacht club, so I use a brush and
Yeah,
a hose.
I got a nice little electric pressure washer, which is great. Old Westinghouse model was fairly cheap, not the highest pressure one, but it does a great job cleaning oyster cages. I don't know if Westinghouse is made in the US anymore, but it used to be.
All right. Any other questions that we have for Joe this morning? Sue, can you hear us a little bit better?
Yes. Sometimes it almost freezes, it seems. I mean, but then the sound comes right back. So maybe it's just the
Okay.
system.
Michael, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm experiencing the same thing. So
Yeah.
I actually zoom in a lot, and to be honest with you.
You
service-
just froze, Mike. The two of them just froze.
That's what's happening on this.
Yeah.
I do this quite frequently, and it seems like, Donna, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah, I can't hear them. I'm not sure they can hear us.
We can hear you.
So yeah, I do this quite frequently, Donna, with other people and with the Marina Committee, and it seems like for some reason it's always an issue. So I don't know if we need to tell IT to see if they can do it. Seems like it's pretty frequently that you can't hear.
Okay. I'll say something. All right. Any other questions? Any other questions for Joe? I want to thank Joe for coming today. I think all of our questions were answered. I know John had a lot of questions, and yeah, but contact us if we can do anything.
Yeah.
If you want to say, Donna, put the hold on people. I have too much going
I
on.
mean, if people keep coming out of the woodwork and
That's
wanting
great.
oyster cages, I'll do my best to keep up. Yeah.
You give them a little lecture about the canals and the need for
I
flow and
usually
things like
say,
that.
the problem is there's a lot of fertilizer going in. There's excess nutrient in the waterways.
Mhm.
And it's not just ocean pines. It's River Run Golf Course. It's if you look at Google Maps, you can do a satellite view of the landscape. There are a lot of farms that have drainage ditches right up to the edge of their fields, which means that they're spreading fertilizer. It's going to wash into that drainage ditch and right into the river, which is then going to get all over everything here.
That's the whole problem in Chesapeake Bay watershed.
Yeah.
It's not just here.
And it's mostly because we eat meat, because meat requires all this growing of crops to feed the animals and, which is why I stopped eating meat a long time ago.
Good idea.
1976.
Yeah. All right. When I moved to Maryland,
You should
1976,
get one of these t-shirts.
there is no.
There you go. I've got one like that.
That's
It's like science matters, or I believe in science.
There's nice down big.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Your hand warmed up. Why can't it?
No, you stay cold.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
See you. Yeah.
Very
I
informative.
don't know if this is good.
That was very informative.
Well, it's not, it was good. So I'm going to call the meeting of the Maryland Marine Activity Advisory Committee to order, and it is 10:22 a.m. So I'm going to ask John, do we have a quorum to
Yes, we
proceed?
do.
And we do have a quorum today. I did send out the agenda. Before we got started, I mentioned that I was going to add at the beginning that we had a visitor today. And then I have an additional bit of new business, which is a new applicant to our committee. So I'm going to go ahead and add those to the agenda. Is there anything else that needs to be added to the agenda? No, we're good. All right. So approval of the agenda with the two. Do I have an approval of the agenda with the two items that I want to
I
add?
approve.
Approve. Okay. We need a vote second. So we have Ken and we have John. Motion to approve the agenda. Now, the minutes came out and I did, Sue always sends them to me to ask if there's anything she may have overlooked. I think that we corrected that. I gave everyone a copy of the agenda that's here today. Mike, I'm not sure if you received a copy earlier, but I did send one out again today. So, anybody know what he said?
I received it.
Okay. And I'm just looking over, I hope everyone had an opportunity. I know the original one, we had Ken's name spelled incorrectly, Ken Tar, but that's correct.
I made all the changes.
Yeah, looks good to me. Any additions or corrections to the minutes as submitted by Sue? So Sue, you can go ahead and remove unapproved and you can send them off to myself, John, Stuart, and Linda Martin. All right.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
this is my first time doing it, so I forgot to send to everybody in advance. So I'll do that next month. That won't.
That's okay. We'll fine tune it, Sue.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. You're not going to be fired today.
Oh, God, no. Okay.
I don't know if Sue, if you're going to be able to give your report on, I'm going to move to the reports, the water testing project. Here's what I know, Sue, that your last testing is going to take place on October the 23rd. Then you'll
Yeah.
have final figures. As a result of that, in a discussion among what was you and John and myself, John has suggested that rather than do a presentation before the board this month, that possibly you and if you can get Taylor to join you, we'll do that presentation November the 23rd. Is that correct, Sue?
Yes, that's the plan. Yeah, I think we'll get
Okay.
a much more complete thing by doing it in November. And we
Okay.
have, Taylor did a really good little thing with Outdoors Delmarva. It was only a couple of minutes and we're trying to figure out.
Okay,
a way
because
that
we only have 10 minutes.
to show that, yeah. So we got it under control.
Okay, so if you would follow up with John, or would you like me to follow up with John and say that we definitely agree today that we'll go forward with the November board meeting.
Sure.
I can do
Yeah.
that. I'll
Okay,
do that.
thank you. Thank you.
And you did contact Taylor, Sue?
Yes.
And let me know what his response is.
Uh-huh.
And is there anyone else on the committee that wanted to be part of that presentation for some reason? And I don't see any hands, so it'll just be you and Taylor. Anything else about Oyster Cage? Well, John, why don't you tell us what the status is? The Oyster Cage at the marina.
Yeah, that's why I was asking Joe. It's there. There's been no vandalism. People have been looking at it. I've actually encouraged people to look at it. I told the guys at the gas box, if anybody wants to know what it is, pick it up, show them what's going on, tell them about it. And the oysters are getting bigger. I clean it once a week.
That's great.
And other than that, I think the initial concern was every time I go over there, I'm not sure it's going to be there.
Right.
So it's in the same spot.
Right.
It's fine. So I guess the
How do you
ambiguous.
pull it up? Because it just does, it seems, because you have to bend over and get it and pull it up. I was going to, and then I thought I might fall in there, so I didn't do
Yeah,
it.
just pull it up and stick on the top.
Okay.
And then there's little shrimp that are on there, crabs that are growing, and that
Wow.
kind of thing. And they're getting a lot bigger. It's fun to watch,
they are.
but I think the overall purpose was not just to throw an oyster cage in there for me to clean, and for my grandkids to look at. The point is to kind of promote
Promote and educate.
Yeah, zoo. So if it's not vandalized, then maybe we get another one for next year. We may want to think about doing some kind of sign or posting or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. I think at the last meeting, we discussed the possibility of putting some kind of a sign, like you see at the zoo. This is what this is, and this is its purpose.
When,
For more information, something like that, if we could get a sign and,
yeah, and the whole idea was
Put that up.
also to put it in a more visible spot. Right now, it's just off, we're just off on T-Dock.
I do, because that's where my
Yeah,
note is.
yeah. So the original plan was to stick it on the walkway, between
Right.
B and C dock at the yacht club, and with a little sign there, so people walking by could actually look at it and see.
So what do you
it
think
that way.
about that?
I think it's a good idea to try. I don't think there's much of a purpose to do it now. I mean, who's
Okay.
over there walking by in the winter time? I think it's a project maybe for over the winter to get the sign made, and then ask permission to put it up in the spring. And then we take our chances, and hopefully it stays.
Right, so should we table this idea until, what do you think, March, April, something like that?
I think we would probably want to wait till January and then have approval for a sign, because we're gonna have to ask John Latham to go to the board, to go to, right now it's Noby. I don't know if Ron Fisher's gonna be back yet. or-
Okay,
So you have to go through all of that. So I think if you start in January, it may take a couple months to be able to be ready to go for April
so we're gonna be asking for permission, and should we possibly ask for funding
for a sign.
for paying for the sign, and then we can
Yeah.
develop that and find out what it's gonna cost and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put this down in the notes that we're tabling that until January, Sue, okay?
Yes.
Um. All right, well, we're going to have to wait until next month for Mike's report on feedback from residents. I know I wanted to make sure that the new email address was being put out there, so I will have to wait until next month. All right, I'm going to move on to unfinished business now. We already have discussed the presentation to the board.
Mhm.
Uh, we did that. We talked last month about the possibility of one of the members of our committee attending the environmental or some other advisory committee meeting. We discussed this. We didn't come up with anything. I know that the environmental and natural assets, I'm not sure the name, I apologize. They meet the fourth Wednesday of the month. I believe the chair is, when I looked it up, it said Patricia Gar. I'm not sure who the chair is, but that's one of the committees we talked about. Which other committees did we think might be a committee that we would want to contact, and maybe send someone to the committee to visit, see what they're doing? You want to say the next meeting?
Jackson Parks is about the only other one. I mean, there's no longer racket sports. The golf doesn't do anything. The
Elections, we don't need that. Where they are, so.
and the entertainment.
Fertilizer and
Okay,
the lawn service.
That's the.
where's that park?
That's ARC and CP. It's ARC. Yeah, that's what they do.
Okay, well,
I think.
all right, we can
ARC and
consider that.
CPI, aren't they the same?
So do we want to hold this till the next meeting?
Yeah.
Discuss it further then? I think if we show our face and we approach them and we go out there, maybe all this grumbling about no communication between, I think our committee has done an outstanding job inviting community people in here by spreading the word, inviting.
Fishing meeting.
That's right. So we went to that.
Yeah,
and they're not.
Excuse me.
Thought we needed to bring up today. I tried to go over the minutes, and Sue and I talk back and forth, and what I believe we still need to continue to talk about. So we have new business. I have received an email. It was actually, I think it may have gone to Dave first, and then it came to me. And apparently a number of committees and their chairs were asking for Ocean Pine email addresses for their committee. So there could be communication between committees using a very unique Ocean Pines email. And I only found 2 committees who have actually, in other words, you contact this committee, you would probably contact me as the chairperson. I have no problem with that. But other committees wanted to have a unique oceanpines.org email. I think it was necessary.
Nothing.
Yeah.
There
Same
we're
here.
back.
I don't know.
I have really strong feelings about the need for a unique email. That
You're the one that would get the email. So it's you.
I know.
If you want another email, it's you.
Well, it's out there, and if at some time whoever takes over when I find it,
I mean, it's you.
and it's probably still going to go to me. In other words,
Yeah, we're saying that's,
Yeah.
I'm gonna accord of it.
and I probably won't even check the email. So,
I'm hanging
all right.
check. Yeah,
okay, so that I just wanted to let you know about that.
We don't have a dog.
I think I'm going to need. I want to introduce this. I decided to call this point persons. Point persons who are people who would be the individual that takes care of a particular project for us. So, for example, parliamentarian, John had already agreed to take that, and he would be the point person. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How about that? I have 6 committees or subjects that each of you could be the point person for. So in lieu of the fact that there aren't too many of us right here physically today, if it's okay with you, I'll send that out by email. And here's what I put: articles in press. That would be, that individual would contact Josh Davis. And let me go back to something under the reports. I had a note here that at the last meeting, someone, and it may have been Ken, was someone on this side of the room, who said, shouldn't we send a photo and an explanation to Josh about the cage that's over there? And I don't know, we don't have that point person. So that point person, one of the first things you might want to do is have that particular item be sent to Josh. So whoever will be willing to do that, let me know. New laws that affect voters, Ken's already agreed to do that. He's going to be in charge of that. I liaison to other advisory committees. So that would be protectors of the St. Martins and all of the other Assateague Trust and Coastal Bays. So I need someone who will do that. And then the next would be a liaison to advisory committees. So one will be advisory committees and one would be community resources. So as to advisory committees, if I said, look, let's find out about attending a particular committee, then I would have that person communicate there. Parliamentarian and vessel safety. So if you can, I'll send that out in an email to everyone.
Well, you can put vessel safety under my heading
as well.
Yeah, that's notice the mariners.
Okay, thanks, Ken. But if you can think of any others that we need, I cut back because I don't know that we need a point person. Maybe we do as to the docks and the dredging and all that. There's so many things.
So, notice the mariners.
Thanks, Ken. And then a new item under new business is I did receive an application, individual who's very interested in being a member of our committee. Albert Johnson, known to us as Mike Johnson. Mike was on our committee, and I guess about a year or so ago, he had to drop off the committee because he took a position as an employee for Ocean Pines as a lifeguard. And he's no longer doing that. And he has a tremendous interest in the committee. And as I said, he had served on the committee. He was sorry he had to drop out. I'm going to pass this around. He indicates that he has a boat, he has a canal right on the canal in front of his home, and he wishes to become a member of the committee and to know about everything that goes on in the community, boating rules and the boating culture. He is a retired engineer with a strong history of solving problems. I need to sign if I endorse him. I do endorse him, but if anyone on this committee has some objection, I would like to hear that now, or before I sign it and pass it on to John. John has to also sign it before it goes on to Linda Martin. So this is open now to any conversation. Does anyone have any objection? And right now, I believe you indicated 8 is a number that we can
have 9.
We can have up to 9. Right now we have 7, so this would be 8. So it would not exceed the number. Does anyone think that 8 is too much? I mean, that's what we have with John. So I don't see any objections in the room. And as I indicated to you, I actually personally went to him and said, we have an opening and you were on the committee. And if you have any interest at all.
Motion we accept that.
Okay, so.
You can assign him to all those other things to make that a
Oh,
stipulation.
I can make him the point person for
Point
all
person
the other
for everything.
committee. Yeah, point person. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sign this. Michael Reynolds, do you know when John will be back in town? He's on vacation, I believe.
I think this weekend.
Okay, so I'll try to get this to John this weekend and get him to sign it. And John knows Mike very well because at the time John was on the committee and Mike were on the committee at the same time. Okay, and we don't have any members of the community on remote. So I don't believe we have any public comments at this time. And our next meeting will be November. Why didn't I put it down? Looks like the 19th. That seem right? November the 19th. That's the third Tuesday of the month. And I think we have a few items we need to go over, and hopefully we can hold that to a short meeting. So at this point, I would ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a motion? Ken, do I have a second? Mike, will you second that motion? Thank you, Mike.
Yes.
That's Mike R. On favor? Favor. Anyone opposed wants to continue this meeting? All right. I'll see you all again November the 19th, 2024 at 10 a.m. in this room. Thank you.